keep on working. Um, but the body will keep the score. This is what people forget. You can maybe have the inner drive and the motivation, but we need to take a holistic approach. And that means we have to take care of our bodies. You may say, well, is that burnout related? I think burnout, one of the manifestations of burnout is performance. Because for me, the communication, if we're really honest, if we really want to be really honest, we need to be able, I'm not saying it's easy always, but we need to be able to communicate our desires, our needs, our wants, our fears, our dreams, our hopes, our expectations, our failures, our hurts to one another.
It's a question of if you're with the wrong person.
Well, this is why I say to people, and this may be a bit challenging to hear, and that's why you can't rush this, because it will take time, as we said earlier, to know each other. You can't do that in a few hours and then, oh, you know, this is a great guy or great woman that I want to spend the rest of my life with. And think, oh my gosh, you know, are you sure?
I took a break and I said that, okay, I cannot just chase these things, because if I'm not okay anymore, I won't be able to do these things. So I have to be, first of all, in good health, good mental health, physical health, to be able to pursue the things I want to pursue. So I had to stop. Welcome to Knowing Who You Are. Today we have with us a guest you have seen before, and it's none other than STEPHANO. His episode, the last one we had done, many people have watched it and were benefited, and they requested us that we do another one and talk about a different issue. So Marco is becoming our expert. And the topic is burnout.
No pressure.
No pressure.
No
exactly.
pressure. I get already burnout.
Yeah, so you're already feeling it. So Marco, what's your idea about like burnout? Because I'll share with you as we go forward with our conversation what I felt every now and then when I had. There are different episodes in my life, especially last couple of years, because I've been pushing too much and I've been through it. So I know, so I can share with you a bit of it. So in the meantime, if you can share for the audience in general what it entails and what do we understand by burnout?
Well, that's a good question. First of all, I'm not an expert. I'm a learner like you and like anyone else.
We're all learning, yeah.
We're all learning.
It was just a joke.
I know, but I just want to voice it. And I've experienced burnout myself too. And I think I think somehow it sounds maybe weird. You need to experience it in order to recognize the signals. As maybe the hard way. There are maybe people wiser and more smarter than me that can prevent it earlier. I think sometimes my learning curve has been, by learning the hard way.
I think that's the best way, isn't it? Otherwise, you end up being a preacher who's just saying the things.
Well, that's a good point. And I think it's important to be real. And that's why I say I don't have all the answers. Some of the things that I share and you share may help some and may not help somebody else. So I think it's picking out the insights or that really resonates and try to implement it and see if it works. But there are a lot of resources out there, of course, as well, particularly when COVID happened. You know, the mental health issues have become a major focus point, which in a good way released a kind of a lot of resources. But you still need to personalize it. I always recommend don't just copy and paste because somebody else says it. Personalize it and then see if it works. And if it doesn't help, then don't feel guilty to
also in different cultures, different countries, I think it manifests in different ways.
Oh, definitely. Talking about different cultures, I know, for example, in Japan, and there might be people from Japan, but I know that the performance culture is very high. which also sadly resulted in a high suicide rate.
Mm,
So talking about you may say, well, is that burnout related? I think burnout, one of the manifestations of burnout is performance.
mm,
You put yourself under huge pressure in order to keep on performing, working long hours. I see that also in the corporate world. People make, keep on working. But the body will keep the score. This is what people forget. You can maybe have the inner drive and the motivation, but we need to take a holistic approach. And that means we have to take care of our bodies, because your mind may think, oh, I can do this, but your body will eventually will say, and that happened to me, to be honest.
mm.
And that happened just before COVID started, because COVID started, I think, in 2020, if am I right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Uh, and I had it just a few months before. My body basically was saying, I'm too tired, I can't do it anymore. I could physically almost not move.
Yeah.
So I realized I really need to pay attention. And I think for me, there are various factors. Misalignment, I think, in where I put my efforts and energy on. But
Mm,
part of that is I love what I do. So that's probably one of the difficulties. And maybe people recognize that when you do what you love and love what you do, that's an interesting one.
yeah.
Um, um, you have additional energy in a way, but you still need to have boundaries. You still need to
Mm.
have downtime. But because it's so natural, you tend to forget it. And I learned that the hard way. So that's one factor. But also, I think pressure, expectation you put on yourself.
It's the idea of
Um,
success. I think that's also
yep,
misaligned. If you say because idea of success, and then we connect it to the idea of happiness, these
yeah,
are all kind of misplaced ideas and misaligned in a way. There's one paper, research paper, that was popping up in a lot of different conversations. And when I was doing my own research, I found it was done by in Minnesota. There's a university in America, Winona State University. And that research paper found that in America, professionals, they experience burnout at the age of 32, most
wow,
of them.
yeah,
I don't know if you had found about Japan, what age. I think it's even younger in Japan, because what I read, I read something by, it was a girl. I think she finally committed suicide. And before her suicide, what she was experiencing, and she was probably 22.
wow.
So, yeah, correct me if someone knows, but I'm quite sure she was quite young when she committed suicide, and she left a suicide note to her mother, what she was going
Wow.
through at that time. So it was really horrible.
Expectation, performance trap. I think, yeah, the definition of success, that is a good one. I think the comparison trap can tie into that. Looking too much to what other people are doing, and you feel like I learned this even at school in my marketing training. Keeping up with the Jonases. Oh, they have it, oh, I must have it, and they have to have that, whatever, and I need to have the same. And if you are prone to that,
Mm.
that will also tie you into a loop. But I think if to keep it for myself personally, I think I put too much pressure on myself in expectation to hit certain targets. Uh, Plus, then add to that, it's also part of my passion. So there's an energy driver that is stronger than normal. So I
Mm.
have strong motivation, and then not considering your boundaries in a sense of taking enough downtime to completely switch off, do something else, so that your brain can recharge, um, focus on different things. So for me, it tied more into my passion, interesting enough.
I know within this 40 minutes, 50 minutes, or an hour interview, or this discussion we have, it's really hard because so many things are coming to my mind now. You talked about comparison, because
Yeah,
as humans, we have this instinct that we try to copy. Say, for
yeah,
example, if I see you sad, and if I see that in your face, you'll see that even if I was smiling, suddenly my face will start looking gloomier.
yeah,
That's one thing. So everything we see around us we
Yeah.
start feeling that we need that. And that's one of the things. We start copying it, and
Yeah.
without knowing, it's not intentional living. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Say, for example, what is right for you according to your core values, what
Yeah.
should be your intentional values. And suddenly, if you start looking as a coach, if you start thinking about other coaches,
Yeah.
they're doing the same thing though, helping people, but the
Yeah.
value system could be different. Their values could be different. And then if you forget your intentions behind what you're doing,
Yeah.
and you start following those people, then you will slowly, I think, get diverted from your own happiness. So
Yeah.
that's very important. What I feel that when we start copying people without knowing, because you'll see, especially as you mentioned, there are many things we buy. Sometimes we are having this conversation. People end up buying things which is quite useless and not much meaningful. You'll see, because even if you go to a mall, small kids, younger people, or anyone who's buying things, they feel like I need to buy more. But the thing is, when they come out of the shop, they get totally distracted by something else. Because
Yeah.
if you really wanted that thing, you'd be so happy. You probably, I mean, I would do that if I had bought something, and I'm guilty of that too. Sometimes things like I've done impulse purchase, and then when I bring it, leave it in one of the rooms, I don't straight away just get busy with that, which I should be. Because
Yeah.
if that was important to me, I would be
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I bought this. I open it, I check it, and whatever that thing is, either I use it, I wear it, whatever. But
Yeah.
if we don't have that and we're just doing it because someone else had done it and I have to do it,
Yeah.
that's the lack of intention. And I think that's where unhappiness starts creeping in.
No, that's a good point. And I'm now, of course, also thinking about the people either a coach or have met in the past. Another one that creates burnout, potential burnout, and maybe we need to define how we define burnout,
Mm,
because so that we are on a similar page. For me, burnout means your energy motivation are low, you have increasingly less energy to do even the simple things of tasks,
mm,
and we're talking about over a long period of time. It's not, I had a bad day or maybe a poor week, but this is a prolonged something. So you're talking about at least 6 months that you basically feel really low in motivation, that even a simple task costs you a lot of energy. That's a signal that you have to pay attention. Another one that can cause burnout, and this sounds maybe
but before
this is
you go to that one, the next one,
yeah,
please
yeah,
hold that thought.
yeah,
Because on that same research paper I was mentioning, they said that there are 5 stages of burnout. So
yeah,
the stage you just mentioned, because say it takes 6 months, as you said. So what happens before that? It's happening, but you're
yeah,
totally unaware of that. So they say the first stage is the honeymoon phase. You feel
yeah,
that I can keep going like this forever, and I have the energy. And you are
yeah,
motivated to a certain extent because you feel like, okay, you're in an important position, probably you're promoted, or you feel like you're going somewhere in life, you made it. So then
yeah,
you just push yourself. So that's the honeymoon phase. And the next stage is that you start showing symptoms,
yeah,
and you're like, okay, I'm a bit tired today, but it's fine. It's fine. I'll be okay tomorrow. And
yeah,
then you get okay tomorrow probably. Then you carry on like before again, and then you start slowly falling down, and every now and then you falter. So on the third one, as you said, say after 6 months, and there's a point when you feel like, okay, there's lack of focus,
yeah,
lack of creativity, productivity, and also brain fog.
yeah,
Like when you can't concentrate, you can't think, you can't make decisions and things like that.
yeah,
And that's the third stage. That's when they said that is the onset, that it has already taken place now.
yeah,
And after that, the fourth stage, they said that it's habitual,
yeah,
that now it's constant. And that's when you're saying that you don't feel like doing anything. And for days on end, you're just, okay, I don't want to clean up the dishes. You just had food, you're just piling up everything on the sink, probably. And then you don't feel like cooking. You just had the pot noodles and you're just warming it up and eating and then leaving it there on the table, things like that.
yeah,
And finally, the last stage is that totally when you need help, professional
yeah,
help to come out of that.
yeah. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I feel that.
No, it's good to say, because I think, again, we want to help people to recognize the
Yeah.
symptoms, and we both add our flavors. It's definitely true. I didn't had those last two. I think my body began to give the signal I need to pay attention.
Well, in your case, what did you do? Then we'll discuss what people can do in such cases. What did you do?
Well, and this is where then came combined with the COVID crisis,
Mm,
because then the lockdown was basically enforced. So basically that meant, I had to slow down, literally.
yeah.
And that to me was a gift, in a way, hidden gift, even though it was uncomfortable on the other hand. But it's changing the pattern. You really have to reevaluate the habits,
Mm,
your priorities, your boundaries, where you put your energy on, where you shouldn't put your energy on. So you need to ask yourself some reflective questions, because, as you say, it's a buildup of and partly of ignorance, not in a judgmental way,
mm,
because particularly even if you enjoy what you do, it's more re-evaluating your work-life balance, because I see that with a lot of people I also coach. They are a lot under stress, a lot of work, particularly in the corporate world, long hours, and they take their work at home, and this is where the problem already starts. As
mm,
soon as you take your work at home, you keep on sitting behind a computer, which you basically shouldn't be doing. You start already creating something. And of
mm,
course, the family dynamics will be interrupted. That can create tension, because you think, well, you're again behind the computer, shouldn't you close it down? You miss engagement, etc. And that if that becomes a habit, that
mm,
becomes a pattern. I personally think that can a potential recipe for a future burnout, because you think you can keep on doing this, but it starts to eat away. And I love this phrase, and of course it's based on a book. Many maybe people know that book. The body keeps the score. I think personally too, the body will keep the score. So if you don't pay
mm.
attention for taking rest, not eating the right food, because all these things are interlinked. You make late hours, so your brain doesn't get enough relaxed time, or you watch too much screen.
Mm.
Research has already shown that if you don't switch off your screen, that has an effect on your brain.
It's very interesting you mentioned that, because some basic things, nutrition you mentioned,
Yeah,
and then another basic thing which we forget and we ignore probably, sleep, which
yeah.
is
Oh, sleep
very,
is a big
very
one.
important. It's a very big one. But we are like, okay, I can get by with 6 hours, 4 hours, and then I can operate. I'll have coffee in the morning, 3 coffees instead of 2 or 1. Then I'll operate. I mean, this is one of the tendencies I've seen many people have. And then also nutrition, as you mentioned. But another thing you mentioned, screen time. But screen time is very interesting in a different way. Say there's a research that says that going to bed, say for example, many of us watch Netflix, say after we have done everything else, we either Netflix or something else we're watching. But if you're watching something which has a cliffhanger, like always keeping you at the edge of your seat, what happens is that you're so excited, even when you go to bed, that affects your sleeping cycle too.
Yeah,
That's
no,
another
that's a
thing.
good. Just to jump on that immediately, when you start to get into the burnout phase, well, what I've noticed, also with listening to other people's stories, you start to develop, I would call costly coping mechanisms.
How's that?
Well, costly coping mechanism could be, in order to keep your motivation high, you drink more coffee, which you could say,
Mm,
well, that's not that bad. But either you start to drink more alcohol, or you start to develop an addiction in whatever that addiction is, because the addiction basically is to do with keeping your excitement, or soothe something, or tranquilize something, or give an excitement more in order to keep you in the high.
mm.
But
Like
that is out
spending
of,
more money, doing more online shopping, things like that.
yeah, well, wherever what gives you
Because I'm
dopamine.
bringing all this so people would see and notice, okay, what's happening.
And it can be, and this is probably a complete different topic, but porn addiction is a big one, because it will increase the endorphins temporarily, but
Yeah.
that will not solve your problem. It just basically undermines it. But that's with anything. It's shopping
Mm,
sprays, whatever. It starts to get out of control.
Hmm.
But also, I think the reason why I call it costly is because it starts to affect relationships. It
Hmm.
starts to affect not only yourself, it starts to affect your environment. And of course, it starts to affect your physiology, your body. So, or people started to take drugs, or misuse of drugs, whatever is out there, in order to get the kick, in order to keep going. And the sad
Very good
story
point.
is, recently I saw an article from a famous model over 20 years,
Hmm.
and she basically confessed that she was living from coffees in the morning, and then in the night she drank alcohol in order to to cope with the amount of caffeine that she basically drank.
Oh my
And
God.
she did that for many years. And she eventually says, I couldn't cope anymore. My neuro system couldn't cope. And that's one of the things I think it's important to highlight, because sometimes I think we glorify certain jobs and
Yeah.
certain, things that are in the spotlight. But we underestimate what is the pressure
Hmm.
behind the scene put on people, the long working hours, sometimes without necessarily the food, as he mentioned. Living only from coffees. They think, my goodness, how do you
I think
sustain? How
working from home should be added to that too.
I'm working from home? Yes, that
And
could
we
be
feel
too.
like, oh, I'm working from home. But the thing is that the workload and how it gets even heavier, because you are now stuck in one place most of the time,
Yeah,
and you don't
yeah,
get much movement. You don't have interaction with people other than
yeah,
the people you get to see all the time. And
yeah,
sometimes probably it's not necessarily that your wife or your partner is at home, or the other way around, or your husband or your partner. But the thing is, they're probably out, but you're
yeah,
stuck at home and in front of the screen. You're just doing it, and how
yeah.
it can affect your mental stability, I think.
Oh, it's an interesting one, because two scenarios comes to mind, because I've coached people in those different contexts. One basically came to me feeling very demotivated,
Mm,
didn't have the energy, wanted to have a different direction, didn't know anymore what, still in the current job, so the job was not a problem. But what I found out was, after, of course, some question, 8 o'clock in the morning, awake, work till 8 o'clock in the evening, 6 days on a row, without leaving the home. And remember, in coaching, I don't tell people what to do. The key is people have to come to their own conclusion. And the
mm.
way I do that then is by asking a question, open-ended question.
What
And
question do
so,
you ask? It's very interesting. I want to know at least one question.
so, well, in his case, he said, well, how can you break this pattern?
Mm,
And then, of course, initially, sometimes people say, well, what do you mean? He said, well, you have established a pattern, and this is what you're now reaping, 8 hours. How would it feel if you would do this differently? Sometimes
mm,
try people to connect with a new feeling. And some will say, oh, it would be amazing if I could do this
mm,
differently. So, okay, tell me more. Now, in this case, he realized, if I just spend some hours in a coffee place
mm.
and do my work there, and then I ask, okay, what are your best hours, working hours? They say, well, in the morning. I say, okay,
Change of
so
environment, right?
change the environment, go to a different place, choose your best spot work-wise, because we all have different work ethos. Because he noticed, for example, that in the afternoon he didn't have the energy. It just
Mm,
was, but in the evening he had. And again, that's why, remember, when you listen to this, please don't think, oh, I need to do the same thing. It's finding out what works for you,
exactly.
but changing the environment, changing the pattern, where is your energy the highest, so that you are most productive. And when you don't have that, then replace it, then not necessarily with work, but then do something else, whether it's exercise, sport, hobby, whatever that is for you. And then in his case, he then worked additional some hours later in the evening, because that
Mm,
was his way of coping. But he implemented this change, this simple change, right?
yeah.
By going to a coffee place, working some hours, and 2 weeks later we had we touched base, and he said, it's so amazing. I feel like I'm coming home. instead of all at time at home. So there's also a psychological thing going on.
Mm,
And I can relate to that myself because I don't work from home.
mm,
That was initially born out of, that's years ago, from a crisis where I realized I need to be among people. And so I looked for coffee places or social environments, and not necessarily to speak with people, but just to be around people.
mm.
Um, and that pattern has always remained, now for very different reasons. And I think it's very important. You have to change your environment. But again, I'm conscious, for example, people who are working always in the office, they face a different problem because it's always in the same environment. Sometimes it's a bit depends. Some companies are really well in designing their work environment, and that is really,
Nowadays, it's changing. Yeah.
it's changing, but it doesn't used to be. It's because then you're basically in a factory under a bright
Mm.
light, and then you have a desk, and then you work. They are now more aware that environment has a huge role to play in your performance. I know, for example, in Japan, they release different kind of smells through the airco
Ah.
because that activates your brain and your energy levels. It's very interesting,
And also, I've
But
seen seats which can be converted into a bed, so they take a nap.
yeah. And to be honest, a nap, people may be laughing at that, but if you feel you need to take a nap, then take a nap.
So I think
You know,
compared to the working conditions, as we discussed, like bright lights, factory environment, and
yeah.
stuck at your desk, I think working from home, in contrast, feels like heaven. Oh my God. Now I can at least be in my PJs or my shorts, walk around, get a coffee, and come back. Things like that.
Well, initially, and that of course came out with the COVID because everyone thought, oh, it's amazing, I can be from home. But then, of
Mm,
course, again, you start to establish a pattern, a habit,
yeah.
and then breaking that habit is then quite challenging because you got accustomed to. And so it is finding the balance. And I always, worked for a long time as an entrepreneur, and I have had seasons where I worked a lot from home, and now I realized there's a big downside to that because it is more isolated. A lot of entrepreneurs I speak with, who are solo, one of the key elements that always comes up is it's you are alone. And so when you're continuously in your own environment, can work against you. So finding then a social place, and you have nowadays even workplaces that you can rent, and you work with other people in the same spot, and it's even with coffee provided and all that stuff. And again, you need to find something that works for you.
You mentioned change of environment.
Yeah,
With change of environment, there's another thing that was suggested is breaking the routine, the monotonous routine.
yeah.
So if that's the case, how would you, can you give an example how people can say, anyone who's in such a scenario, how would they break that routine? How can you say you're working and you have a pattern of work that you have to do? How would you break your routine?
Well, maybe using that example of the guy I coached, and also I think for myself, maybe interject my own personal experience as well. So he made it practical by basically now signing three times in the week to go to different coffee places. So he made a list of different coffee places
Mm,
and spend hours there on purpose. Also, what kind of tasks you're going to do, because he said that's how
yeah.
I'm the best productive. And then when I'm then leaving it, I do something else, whether it's exercise, gym, or whatever.
Mm,
And then I go home and then spend additional, in his case, then a few hours more, and then have a break, and then really have a
mm,
break. And this is really important. I think the difficulty with working from home, or if you are own business owner, you can keep on working without realizing.
yeah.
People who run their own business, they know you're always somehow busy with your business. I had to learn. I went away, for example, to Cornwall, and I really wanted to have a break. So, and somebody even asked, so are you then reading? And I said, no, anything to do with business, I just don't want to think about it. I need offloaded,
True,
nothing.
true.
Uh, and I have to be rigorous because it's very tempting then to slip into it.
My day off, to be honest with you, I'm guilty of that. Every time I have a day off, I find that I fill up the whole day with a lot of different activities. And normally, people, when they say you wind down, say by 7, 8 o'clock. And I know some people say after 6, no work. We don't work after 6. We work up to 6 or 7. But
Yeah,
my thing is that I found myself even working up to 10:30 at night.
yeah, yeah. There you
And
go.
then I go to bed. Then I take a book to read. I feel like, okay, I didn't read a book all day, so I need to read now. And I read
Yeah,
a book. My partner
pressure.
had the other day, poor woman, she just was sharing with me. She said, I know, I want you to do your thing. I know you want to, and you're productive. That helps you. You get motivated like that. But I feel like I haven't seen you because during breakfast, I just had my breakfast. She's talking about herself. I woke up earlier. I had my breakfast alone, and by the time you got ready, I was out because I went to the gym at the time when she was having breakfast. Because after that, after gym, I would go to work. So I went to work by the time she's out of the house. So I had my breakfast, and then I was out of the house. But we were doing everything like alone because of
Yes.
my
Yeah.
routine. She
Yeah.
does things around my routine kindly. So, and then during her break, we didn't get to talk much because I was again busy with managing some things on the phone and things like that. And our break time didn't happen at the same time. So when I was on a break, she wasn't.
Yeah.
So we didn't get to talk. Coming home, uh, I came home after her though, but then she came home. It's more or less the similar time. I thought, okay, let's have dinner quickly because I have to go back to the studio and get to work. She said, okay. And she left me. So all these things happen. And by the time it's 10:30, 11 o'clock, or even
Yeah.
more, then I went to bed with a book and
Yeah.
I'm reading. And by the time she's like, okay, I need to sleep. Fine. And I say, yeah, good night. But I didn't realize. So this is one of the things they say when you have someone understanding and when you're getting affected by situations like that, if rather than complaining, that person at least makes you realize just a conversation. Even
Yeah.
that sentence she said that I feel like I haven't seen you all day,
Yeah. Yeah.
it suddenly woke me up. I said,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not complain. She just said, it's a matter
Well,
of fact
it's
way. But
yeah.
it really helped me realize. And I said, I'm really sorry because
Yeah.
I wasn't seeing it that way. And I just got busy. I was like, I have this goal. I have to get this done and get that done. And you're right. I said, okay, let's leave everything. Let's sit down. Don't watch anything. Don't do anything. Just sit down and we talk.
Yeah.
Let's talk about anything. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be any particular thing, but
Yeah.
we just sit with each other and spend some time.
Yeah.
So why I'm saying this, even for people, the burnout, if it has set in, so it's important to share with people
Yeah.
who will get affected, or if you're not aware of it, that the other person you have in your life, whoever that is, it could be a friend, it could be a housemate, even you are close with because you're sharing the house with them, or if it's your husband or wife, if your partner, then if they at least let you know what is
Yeah.
happening, the engagement is
Yeah.
missing or something is happening, then
Yeah.
it's
That's
helpful. It's
it's
very
very
important.
important. I think it's a very important topic you highlight because, of course, I encountered it also with couples. Where some of the couples I coach, which is again, it's work related. People take work
Mm,
home, and it starts to interfere in their in their intimacy, in a relationship dynamic. And you may have heard of the love language. You know, Chapman. People are not speaking each other's love language. So in this
mm.
case, Esther spoke to you. I have not seen you. So it sounds to me like the quality time is important to her. Is that correct?
For both
So
of us, we
for
we take
both
it
of
very
you.
seriously.
So that means the love tank of quality time is starting to diminish.
Yeah.
Now she's voicing it. She's saying, I've not seen you. So indirectly saying, hello, we need some quality time. And quality time, by the way, doesn't mean doing stuff necessarily. It depends on the couples.
Mm,
But it is whatever that means for you both to be together. And if you don't listen to that, and sadly, I see it happening. You know, I can sometimes already see it unfolding when
mm,
people share their stories. Um, it will start to deplete. Now, this is the interesting thing. If the love tank, you know, if you speak it like that, is starting to deplete it,
mm,
that can also be part of a cause of burnout because we operate much better if our love tank is full,
Mm,
ideally overflowing, when the emotional connection is alive. I read a book which is related to the love language, but then for the military, because the military people who are, who recognize this, they are deployed for 6 months or longer or shorter, mostly on a secret mission. But the idea behind it is that he wrote the book Love Languages for the Military, is because you are physically not present with each other. So how do you
mm,
keep your emotional connection alive when you're not with each other?
mm.
And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, we all can benefit from this because we are not always together physically,
Yeah.
even though maybe not 3 months, 6 months that long. But if you're on a business trip, if you are, I don't know, whatever, a conference, and I think I like the idea. How do you keep the emotional connection alive? I compared like the power line to your home, right? Your electricity power line. If you don't keep it high, you eventually you have no warmth, you have no cooling, it's basically the house starts to not function. Does that make sense? I speak like a metaphor.
Mm,
So keeping the emotional connection alive is vitally important. Now you have to figure out what that means for, if you're a couple, what that means for each other. And you realize, wait a minute, we need to just have more time.
mm.
And I think that is a good, it's not one of the ways, but I do believe that can one of the ways why either burnout can be prevented, because you have then somebody basically already saying, hey, hello, this is getting out of hand. We need to reassess. I know there are certain cultures, work cultures, where basically performance is basically rewarded. So the more you
Mm.
work, the better. I think that's unhealthy. You have better workers if you have a good work-life balance. And again, that's personal. You can't say, a standard, this is for everyone, but you have to find a balance for you, because you operate better, you function better if you have the balance.
That's one of the reasons why I have created some kind of tradition, or you can see a ritual. I mean, even though Esther said that we don't have to do that, but I feel it's important. It's like having a time in the week when we sit down literally and mindfully we share things. Like if there's anything that she's not happy about, or she says that no, there's nothing I'm not happy about. But I say, okay, it doesn't have to be something that you're unhappy about, but even whatever is going on, a feeling or something you want to share that it could have been done better. And if I have something, I'll share with you too. Or if there's nothing, we just talk about
Yeah,
anything. Your Most of the time we share our everyday situation at work and everything that's happening. But if there's anything else you want to talk about, we just talk. And during that time, no distraction. We don't talk sitting next to each other watching something and we consider that one as our talking time, because that's not right.
yeah,
And we don't talk while we're doing something else. So there's no phone, no nothing.
yeah,
So I feel that initially she was like, why do we need that? Because we always communicate. We are quite good at that. And I said, no, let's try that. But finally, one day when we had a day when we just literally sat down and we made a point that we're going to communicate today mindfully,
yes,
she's like, it's really great. We talk
yeah,
and I feel like really we shared a lot of things. To be honest, I came to know, and I shared things with her, but I came to know there are things that she didn't tell me, but
yeah,
she was feeling in a certain way. There are certain things she was feeling about. But when she started sharing with us, oh my God, I didn't know about that. That's what's happening.
yeah,
So it's very important, I think, for people to have this kind of ritual. I think it's important because when we have an appointment, say I have an appointment with you to record this,
yeah,
I make it important that, okay, this person would set aside some time to sit down and for this recording, for this discussion. So I cannot disappoint him and cancel it, something like that. But
yeah,
we don't get to do these things most of the time for people around us and important people in our life.
yeah.
Most of the time, we don't do that. So I think being mindful about the people around you and their needs is very important as well.
And that's a very good point, because one of the problems we face in our today's culture is that we are maybe very friendly, but there's an increase friendliness going on. We talked about it a while ago, that people feel
Please explain.
increasingly,
Yeah.
well, people feel increasingly
Mm,
emotionally and socially isolated.
mm.
And that is because we are not connecting. And if we are not connecting on the deeper level, that doesn't mean you have to share your whole life. But what I've noticed is,
But when you said we are friendly, what did you try to
well,
indicate?
friendly, we you know, well, people can be friendly. Hi, nice, how was your day? Great.
Mm.
You know, that's being nice. And there's nothing wrong by being nice, but it doesn't go deeper. You
Even,
see,
for casual acquaintance, you need to know someone for or spend time with someone for 40 hours.
yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
to become a friend 100 hours and to become very good friends 200 hours. That's another
Well,
research.
well, I would say it takes even 1,000 hours to get to know someone.
Sometimes,
Or
yeah, true.
because let's be honest, I think we are so complex human beings. I've said this to I wrote about this once. We all carry a galactic inner world that takes time to explore.
Mm,
um I read a book which was from by a psychologist, and there was about a couple who was basically 40 years married, right? And they were on the brink of divorce, and they sought help. That's where he came in. And what they discovered, right, that they basically never really listened to each other.
oh my God.
They knew the facts, they knew the habits, they knew the quirkiness, the what the likes and all that stuff, but the deeper level of listening didn't happen. So he introduced them in how to listen more deeply to one another and not make the assumption. It's a killer. Assumptions are killers.
Mm,
Um, And what happened was that they fell in love like teenagers, because they began to realize that there was a world that they never knew from each other. And you're talking about 40 years.
wow.
So I think we make so quickly an assumption that we know somebody,
Mm.
even if even if it's 10 years, 5 years, doesn't really matter. When do you really know somebody?
The discovery is golden, isn't it?
Uh,
Yeah, every day you discover something if you're mindful.
Yes, and we all go through all kinds of different experiences, and that's what I also say with online dating. People are, I think personally, go way too quick. Don't rush the crush, I always say, uh, because it takes time to get the true colors to know from somebody, different contexts, different scenarios, the ups and downs. As you know, I learn a lot from all kinds of different industries, special forces. I know that they say with the jungle training,
Mhm.
it boils down to this in the selection. Do I want this soldier with me by
Mm,
my side when I'm in a war situation? And I'm
mm.
thinking, wow, that's a good question to ask yourself. Is this a person, if you're talking about dating, but you can apply it also to your partner? Is this a person I want to be by my side, that I enjoy, but also can face any challenge?
No, I mean, even with partner, when someone has a partner, say, for example, yeah, they call themselves partner, there would be many people around us, but being with someone not necessarily always mean that, okay, you have done it, it's done, it's a done deal. Because many times you'll discover that people are together for wrong reasons.
Mm,
And some people don't even notice they're unhappy, or sometimes they're stuck. And sometimes they feel, okay, I don't have any other option anyway. What else would I find? So at least it's the devil I know, so it's better thing.
compromise, yeah.
Yeah, compromise. So I think even for partners, it's equally applicable.
For me, it made me realize, so what does really know mean?
Mm,
So can we be curious? And this is another topic we could talk about as well. Curiosity is a lost skill.
mm.
I may have shared this, I'm not sure, but NASA did a research about, I think it was 14 or 1600 children between 4 and 5 year olds. And they found to test their creative geniusness, right? 98% was creative genius, right? So that's
Okay.
really high, right? They did the same test 10 years later with the same group. Only 12% had creative geniuses left.
Wow.
So for me, the big question is, what the heck is happening? How is this going so dramatically down? And I think in relationships, whether it's in a committed relationship or whether it's getting to know somebody as a friend or as a date, I think we have lost the art of being curious. Because if you're
Hmm.
curious, you want to know, you want to explore, and not to fix, not to rescue, all that stuff. You just want to get to know. And I think when you had that conversation, but this is an assumption, you correct me, right? We are now live recording, so you can correct me. When you had this conversation with Esther, you discovered some new things because there was probably also some curiosity going on. Is that correct?
Yeah. Sometimes it's curiosity, sometimes because I'm present, properly present,
Yes,
she
big one.
feels like she can share things. She started opening up. So,
Yes.
what I do whenever I see that something is opening up, it's a beautiful thing if people are mindful about it. I even cancel appointments.
Yeah.
Say, for example, I'm supposed to go to the gym, and suddenly during the time, if she has started saying things, and I feel like she feels like talking, and this is a golden moment, doesn't happen all the time. I said,
Yeah.
okay, gym, I can do with my, even without thinking much, I can go through the motions. But
Yeah.
these moments in life, these are important and I
Yeah.
value them. I said, okay, yeah, let's sit down. And I don't even tell her that, just not to make her feel bad that I'm canceling my gym appointment and not going to the gym. I'm skipping it for now. I just say, yeah, let's sit down. So what happened then? I just try to understand, because it's one of the things. One thing is that you're giving the time, the
Yeah.
valuable time to that person, like mindful time. Another thing is that you're getting to know that person better.
Yeah.
And I really value that, because going forward, whoever it is, if it's your friend, colleague, or whoever, if you know them better, it makes your life easier.
Yes. Also,
And
you can be better. You can be better fine-tuned. You can be better collaborate because you
yeah,
recognize what their strengths are, what the limits are,
because
what
it's
their
take
drainers
out
are.
more assumptions. There had been moments when things started opening up, and probably I wasn't noticing, and I got distracted. I didn't, and I missed that point. And when I looked back, I said, oh no, I missed that opportunity I had. It's a
Yeah.
nice opportunity, not in a sense that you're getting to know some secrets. It's
Yeah.
more about knowing the person. And
Yes.
especially if you feel that person is important in your life, it's very important that you are present, literally listening properly.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why I've said many times, empathic listening is the golden currency. If everyone would learn that one, I think we would have already a better world. Probably less divorce and less conflict. Being present is so important, and it doesn't have to be long. It is, as you say, it's the quality in that moment, um, and I think that can also either be a contributor of burnout when it's not
Mm,
happening, or it can be a diffuser of burnout because people. I've noticed also with myself, if I feel emotionally supported, even though I go through challenging time, I
mm,
can handle much more. If I feel I'm on my own, I'm completely isolated. Let's make
yeah.
this a bit dramatic. Then it's much tougher, and that's another problem I hear quite a lot. People find it very hard to seek help, to
Mm,
ask for help, because either it is a sign of weakness, is a sign of maybe shame or awkwardness. Well, I was supposed to be doing this myself. I have to be independent because I have to prove that I can do it all myself. You know, that kind of language. And I think vulnerability is important in our relationships.
sometimes you are vulnerable to someone, but the problem
Yeah.
is if it's to the wrong person,
Yeah.
they end up coming back using it against you.
Yes.
I
Okay.
mean,
That's a good point.
I mean, so
Let's just,
yeah.
I just want to hook that in immediately. When you want to be vulnerable, choose safe people. And safe people means people who take ownership, people who are not in the blame game. They have a growth mindset. They have self-awareness, are good listeners. Again, good listeners, are curious, take time for you. I want to encourage you. Are not rescuers, are not
Mm,
fixers, are not advice givers. None of that stuff. But people who take ownership of their own growth, they tend to be also more stable people than people who don't. Just
mm.
to highlight that, because yeah, you're right. You can't do this for everyone. You need to feel safe. If you don't feel safe, then by all means, do not. There is a reason why you not feel safe, right?
Yeah, true.
Um, And that's why empathy is such an important quality, because empathy means you step into somebody else's shoes. What do they feel? What's their concern? What are they thinking? And that I will use that to guide my actions in supporting them, not to fix them, not to rescue them, but to come to the same level. And when a person, this is so from a neuroscience point of view, is so important, because when somebody feels that you get them, that you see them, that you understand them and feel them. They feel valued, they feel acknowledged, they feel accepted, they feel loved. And then the barrier, because remember, the brain is always scanning. Are you a threat, or are you for me, or are you against me? We may not say this, but indirectly we do. And when we sense, my goodness, this person is getting me, we lower our defenses. And this is where the bridge of trust is being established. Therefore, we can transfer something.
Yeah.
But so many times when we do not take the time to listen empathically, there is no trust. And if there is no trust, you cannot transfer. And I see it even in business. Salespeople who try to sell you stuff. I see that on a regular basis with myself. I'll use myself as an example. They are convinced that I need their product. And they pinpoint out all my weak points. Remember, they're complete strangers. And I'm thinking, and you want to sell me something? You don't even know me. You have not even built a bridge of trust. So how on earth can you say that I need your product? I don't need your product because you already put a barrier. You see what I mean? And
Yeah.
but we do that on individual level as well. That can be in dating. It can be in relationships. So that's why, going back to the emotional connection, keep that alive in couples, in relationship. Part of that is the listening, part of that is the awareness, part of that is also the empathy, part of that is also the curiosity of I want to be involved with you.
Can I add one of my mindsets to it as well?
Yeah, of
Because
course you
I
can.
always do something. Say, for example, whenever I feel like, okay, this communication is happening, and sometimes if I'm like, okay, a bit distracted, impatient that I need to get back to something else, I remind myself, this is my practice, that what if one day I don't have this in my life?
Ooh,
And
ooh.
then I will be like, oh, she's not communicating with me much these days. She doesn't she miss me anymore? Doesn't she find me interesting anymore? Just think about that scenario in your life when someone is trying to communicate with you and being interested in you and trusting you, and
Yeah.
you're not valuing it. What will happen when you don't have in your life? So if you think about that, then probably you will learn how to value this point in your life when you still have it.
Yes. No, I like that. I really like that. It's a great one. It highlights for me again, I may have mentioned it in the past, is applying your MOT on your relationship.
Yeah.
Have your checkups on a regular
Mm,
basis, because if you don't, you come with that what you just mentioned. Well, if it's not there anymore, what's the implication? I think sometimes you still need sometimes people need help from outside.
mm,
I deal sometimes with situations where one person this is in a couple relationship, the one person is not seeing it. One is carrying the load, and the other person is continuously working, not only from during the day, but also, for
mm.
example, in the evening. And it's always work, 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 work. And how do you change that? How do you positively challenge that if somebody is uh, not wanting to change,
I think the
or
problem is even then in the core values, probably. That's
yeah.
even deeper. So then to change it, whether it's, I don't know if that's the solution to change or whether they will change because the value system is not the same. It's a question of if you're with the wrong person.
Well, this is why I say to people, and this may be a bit challenging to hear, and that's why you can't rush this, because it will take time, as we said earlier, to know each other. You can't do that in a few hours and then, oh, this is a great guy
Mm,
or great woman that I want to spend the rest of my life with, and think, oh my gosh, are you sure?
yeah.
Because for me, the communication, if we're really honest, if we really want to be really honest, we need to be able, I'm not saying it's easy always, but we need to be able to communicate our desires, our needs, our wants, our fears, our dreams, our hopes, our expectations, our failures, our hurts to one another. Now, you can't do this in one go. You will be overwhelmed. This will be an evolving over a period of time, that you feel safer again and more with each other, where you really can explore this. This is how intimacy grows. But if we are not able to do that because we're already insulated by our own limiting beliefs or trauma that we have never dealt with, so therefore we don't trust, that becomes a barrier.
I feel like, how I'm just realizing as I'm talking, how many things are so interlinked. We started talking about burnout, and that was the focus of this conversation. But how I'm discovering as I'm talking, and you probably are realizing too, it's not that simple black and white thing that you just start talking about, how many dimensions it has and how many things are connected to it. So as I'm saying, always, that's why it's so, the discussion I have with you is so much fun all the time, because we go in so many different directions. And that's when I say, Marco, this is part 2. We'll have to do probably a part 3. So on that note today, whatever we discussed, I feel on the burnout thing, one thing is to be mindful about where you're going. And when you're feeling in a certain way, that what you're doing is not feeling right, is not comfortable for you anymore, I think that's the indication that you should be mindful about, rather than letting it slip and you wait for another 6 months and by the time it's out of your hand. So when you control, like Marco's case, my case, whenever I was feeling overwhelmed, that I took a break and I said that, okay, I cannot just chase these things, because if I'm not okay anymore, I won't be able to do these things. So I have to be, first of all, in good health, good mental health, physical health, to be able to pursue the things I want to pursue. So I had to stop. So we have to be mindful about the indications. So we talked about brain fogs. We talk about lack of productivity, lack of creativity, irritability. You're angry, you're upset. You can't make decisions, and you find yourself overwhelmed, like decision fatigue you have. So things like that. And Marco, if you want to add, to wrap up, anything to that, whatever I mentioned.
Well, I'd say you summarized, but I think I really want to stress, if anything that we discussed or resonate with you or touched something that you think, oh my gosh, I need to explore this, please reach out to either of us or me or somebody else that you feel safe with, because that's worth exploring. Because when something is triggered, even in this conversation that we have, that to me is always an indication, pay attention. I've learned it over the years in my life. When I got provoked through listening to something that was basically putting the finger on something that I was maybe not completely aware of, maybe on purpose, or maybe, for all kinds of different reasons. There's no judgment. But if you feel stirred, that is a point to listen. So that will be my recommendation. Everything that we have shared, and of course there's much more to be able to, but follow through. Don't just, oh, that was great, and then do whatever you do, but follow through. If something was triggered for you, follow through with action by either seeking help or resources or whatever.
No, great, Marco. On that note, I thank you for your time again, because I would like to share with people, we had already attempted to record this episode last week or a couple of weeks back, but we had a great conversation, but it wasn't recorded. I realized I didn't press the record button. And on that day, you are literally on my studio. We're sitting in person rather than on Zoom call. So this is my second attempt on part 2, and hopefully we'll do more parts, because we very frankly share our experiences, and we feel like two friends are talking and there's no barrier. So and that's when the authentic thing can happen. And when it's authentic, that can end up being helpful to other people. And I appreciate the time and also the wisdom you're sharing with me and the rest of the audience of Knowing Who You Are. So on that note, people, you'll find Marco's details. If you want to reach out to him, it will be in the show description. And definitely Marco does help people online, and he has other methods. He definitely, if you reach out, he'll share with you. So I'll leave that in the show description. You can get in touch. So on that note, hopefully it will help you from this episode. You'll get some information. Also, it will make you think, it will trigger something in you, and hope to catch you soon with another episode. Take care.